Gemara, today's daf is daf Chav Dalad, and we are up to the two dots on top of the page, about 5 lines on the top of the page. Actually, 3 lines. The Gemara here is very structured. We're going through every word of the Mishnah, and we're trying to learn out how do you know that if a kohen finds themselves in these circumstances that the avodah is disqualified, and anything they did, they actually will passel the carbon, they ruined it. So the Gemara says as follows. This is the last parts of the Mishnah, one of the last parts. Oimed al gabe kelim. If he's standing, instead of standing directly on the ground, the kohen is standing on top of pots. Al gabe behema, on top of an animal. Al gabe ragle chveder, on top of the legs of another kohen posel, because his feet are not grounded; they're not directly on the ground. And the Gemara is going to ask, why do you have to give us 3 different examples? But first of all, Minola, why should it be posel? What's wrong? The Talmud Rabbi Shmuel. Hoyel, because the ritzba mikudeshes, the actual ground of the Beis Hamikdash in the courtyard, was sanctified, as we'll soon see by David HaMelech. The klei sharis mikachim, and we also know that the klei sharis make holy. Right? We say that the pots, you put things inside the pots in the Beis Hamikdash, and that sanctifies whatever you put in there. The mincha you put in there, whatever you put in there, is ma klei sharis. Just like the klei sharis, lo yedav chaytze ben lebein klei sharis, and the kohen carries the klei sharis, that nothing should intercept between the person and the klei sharis. Afritz, but so too on the ground, lo yehei davar chaytze beinoi lebein harispa. Nothing should be between you and the ground. Just like when a kohen takes, let's say, the pot, the klei sharis, to receive the blood. And we learned before, it says v'lokach kohen. There should be nothing else but the kohen and this klei sharis. So too, the same thing with the floor. He has to be standing on the floor, and nothing should be in between. Says the Gemara, why do you need to give us 3 different examples? So the Gemara says each one adds another layer, another chiddush. If we were told that you're standing on a keli, it's a chatzitza, it intercepts, and therefore you're not standing on the floor. I would say it's a totally different different substance than who you are, and therefore it's considered a chatzitza. Our behema. If you're standing on top of an animal is also flesh and blood. The meaning of the basar is flesh. Maybe it's not considered a chatzitza, because a chatzitza is, usually we say if it's the same mean, it's not a chatzitza, only if it's something extraneous or alien. A behemoth maybe is the same. So now you tell us a behemoth. V'yash mean a behemoth, mean the other one, it's not human. Our chaveda, standing on top of a kohen's leg, the adamu, maybe it's not a problem. If we need all of them. Tanya, we learned, Rabbi says, what happens if ragle achas ala kli v'ragle achas ala ritzpa? One leg is on a keli, and one leg is on the ground. Ragle achas ala even, one leg is on a stone. V'ragle achas ala ritzpa, one is on the ground. So 1 foot you have on a keli, and 1 foot on the ground. So it's sort of in between. How do we deal with that? Or 1 foot is on a stone, and 1 is on the ground. That 1 foot on the stone, the ground is made out of stone. It's sort of closer to the ground. Nevertheless, how do we treat that? So it depends. Growing, we see. This is how we deem it. If we remove that keli, but not 11, we remove that stone. You can still stand on your 1 foot. Then the yavad avodos and do your service. Then you're not really leaning on that rock or on that keli. But if we take that away and fall down, then avodos psula. Obviously, you're not on the ground and you're puzzled. Boy, Rabam asked a question. What about Nidaudla Evan? One of the stones moved from its original place, and now there's just sand over there. But Omad Oleha, and you're standing on it. Mao, how do we treat that? If you had no intention to take that stone, no, you're standing on a stone that originally was on the ground, but now it's sort of moved away from the original position and somewhere else, and you stand on that stone. Do we say, if you had no intention of using this stone again and reattaching it like the bird? No question. The vada chaitzas, so it's no longer part of the floor, and therefore it's a chatzitza. Keep to boilach. Our question, after we establish na mishnah, that's chatzitza. Our question is the daita lechabra. Your intention is to place it back and attach it. Do we say, kiva the daita lechabra, you intend to bring it back and attach it? Since it originally came from there, and you plan to put it back, it's as if it's still sort of part of the ground. Or do we say, listen, the fact of the matter is right now, it's not attached, and therefore it's a chatzitza. Rabba Zuta, that was his name. Rabba, interesting name, because Rabba means grand, and Zuta means small. Somehow or another, he had both names, grand in learning, maybe, and small other things. Boyle Hachi. He said that this is the question, Boyle Abam. This is the question Abami asked. What about Nekra Evan? That stone was removed from its original place, and the Omad Bimekoima. You stood there now on the sand. You're still standing, but there's no longer a stone there. The question is, when David HaMelech sanctified the ground, did he sanctify merely the surface? Or did he sanctify everything all the way down to the very bottoms of the earth? What's the question? Ki Kaddish David Ritzpa El Yoina Kaddish. When David Melchem sanctified the ground, did only do the surface? Or Dilma Adla added time until the very center of the universe, of the earth, Kaddish. And as Teresa says, interesting that David Melch did not build the base of Mikdash, Shlomo Melch did. But Hashem in today's Haftarah told him that you're not going to build the base of Mikdash. Nevertheless, he did whatever he could do. So he sanctified the ground. He organized with the Aron and everything else. He did whatever he could do. So they want to ask the question: if your question is whether the ground is merely the surface holy, or David Melch sanctified even the sand and below, is V'tiboy, ask a simple question: what happened? The entire surface was removed, and all you have is the sand below. Kol Azarukula. What the din would be then? I mean, why talk about one particular specific, stone that was moved? So he was convinced that we know for a fact that the Melech sanctified all the way down to the Tahim. But our question is, you're not standing on a stone, you're standing on the sand. Is it derech shir bekach? It's a normal way of serving, and therefore it's all right, because sanctity is not a problem, and the normal way of serving is all right. Ain't derech shir bekach, not the normal way. And Teku, we remain with a question. Kibul b'smoil pasul. If the kohen, this is the last part of the Mishnah, if the kohen received with the left hand, we're not even talking about the left hand, we're talking about the righty, but he took with the left hand, if he accepted the blood with the left hand, pasul. And Rab Shimon says it doesn't matter, right hand, left hand, doesn't matter. What's going on here? What's the machlekes? So we're going to have a machlekes. Basically, we're talking now about Kabbalah. We'll see later in the Gemara the same machlekes regarding sprinkling the blood. According to Chacham, it has to be the right hand. According to Rab Shimon, it could be the left hand as well. And where we learn all these things from, we're soon going to discuss this, is we learn Gzeir Shava from Mitzvah, because by Mitzvah, the Torah spells out that it has to be on the right earlobe, on the right thumb, and the right toe. It continuously says right. And we might make a Gzeir Shava from other things from Mitzvah to say that it has to be the right side, as we will discuss. So in the Pasuk, it says that the Kohen should take from the blood of the Chattas. So it talks about taking, which is receiving, which is the Chayre Kabbalah. And it says the Be'etz Boy. So it says two things. It should be the Kohen, and it has to be with his finger. And then it says, and you should place it, you should place it and sprinkle it on the corners of his Mizbeach. Now we know finger from Mitzvah means right finger, but is it referring to the second half of the pasuk, which is the sprinkling that has to be done on the right, or is it referring to the first half of the pasuk, v'lokach hakoyin, which is what, receiving the blood in the keli, or is it referring to both? So the Gemara says, and we'll see there are three opinions in here, this whole thing. Tanabon, and our Mishnah only mentions two, but there's a third one as well. Tanabon, we learned. It says the pasuk bad to the finger, and it says v'lokach, you should receive the blood, and it says the finger, melamid. So we'll hear you learn now that the Kabbalah receiving the blood should be only with the right hand. And with the finger, then it says in the same pasuk, with the finger, v'nasa. You use your finger and you sprinkle blood. Is melamed shleitenesin, so both the receiving and the thing has to be the etzba, and we're going to learn later etzba from Mitzvah that has to be your right. So according to the Chachamim, the receiving of the blood, the sprinkling of the blood, both have to be done with your right finger. But Rab Shimon says the following thing, which sounds a bit cryptic. Yad b'Kabbalah, does it say the word hand? So right now the Gemara takes it literally. It says finger. It doesn't say hand. Does it say the word hand? As if to say hand, I'm happy to say it's the right side, but not finger. Ella be'ed, but says a finger. It's by his finger. The nasan, and place it. Shaloi tehei nesina ella b'yamin. That they should, so the finger that you should use, the right, is only by the right side. Since it does not say yad by the receiving the blood, kibul b'smo kosher. So if you received it with your left hand is kosher. So the first half, in other words, as if to say, we're going to take the word etzboy and we're going to use it for the sprinkling. So the sprinkling has to be done with the right finger. But the first half of the pasuk, does it say the word yad? No. So therefore, you can receive the blood either with the right hand or with the left hand. So right now, the Gemara takes it literally that we should have had the word yad. There's no yad there. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Rab Shimon, how do you know etzboy finger means the right? Because you learn from Mitzvah. Well, by Mitzvah it says al yada. He should also put on his hand. Sorry, it says by that's boy. He talks about the coin. The towel, the coin has to dip his boy. How you mean? Has to dip his right finger into the water. But it says regarding the Mitzvah that talk about Mitzvah, and regarding Mitzvah it says that on the boy of his hand, you should on his right hand. So it says right by hand, it says right by etzba. So why does Rab Shimon say when it comes to a finger, yes, right side? But when it comes, what do you call it? It doesn't say the word yad, and therefore we don't have it. But it says finger. So the Gemara is like this. I don't understand. If he believes in the Shava, so why is he insisting on the word hand? What's wrong with finger? So what if it doesn't say yad by Kabbalah? He says etzba, and etzba is good enough. The eat less things should know, unless you say you don't believe in the Shava. So then how does he know sprinkling has to be on the right hand? And he said, because it says the word finger. And even would said the word hand by Kabbalah. So what? If it doesn't believe in the Shava, brings in the Shava. What's going on here? Where does hand come in? Because right now, more things hand is different. Luchayda, hand, finger, they all learn from the same place. So what's going on here? Amr Abuda. So Abuda gives first one shot. La'olam less like the Shava. Does not believe in the Shava. If it does not believe in the Shava. So therefore, and this is what he says. Not does it say hand by receiving the blood. Does it say right hand? Does it try to explicitly say, implicitly is not good enough. Does it say explicitly right hand? Does it try to say right hand by receiving the blood? No. Because it doesn't say keep it kosher. If you receive the blood with the left hand is good enough. Which the obvious question is, so how could Rab Shimon said, but when it comes to sprinkling the blood, you got to use your right finger. If he doesn't believe in the Gezerah Shava, then so what if it's finger? It doesn't say right finger, it says finger. I don't understand. Even sprinkle, but also, how knows the right? Question number one. Right, question number two. And it's not true. If he less Rab Shimon doesn't hold the Shava, of course he does. But Tanya, we learned. Rab Shimon says, wherever it says the word hand, Ein El Yamin is the right side. That's my finger, Ein El Yamin. Rabbi Shimon clearly does agree with this Gezerah Shava. Elo Marava says Rabba. Elo Marava says Rabba. Elam really East like Zayda Shava. Rabba holds that there is a Zayda Shava. V'hachi Kama. Rabba holds that there is. This is how Rabba learns. What Rabbi Shimon's view is. Of course, he holds the Zayda Shava. So what's Rabbi Shimon saying? Rabbi Shimon is saying here, V'chinemra Yad B'Kabbalah. Like this, he believes hand can mean right and the finger can mean right, but it says in the pasuk only finger, and the pasuk talks about two parts: receiving the blood, v'lokach, and then it says the pasuk also that you should place it on the mizbech of v'nosa. Now, okay, you how do you sprinkle the blood with your finger? But to receive the blood, it's a bucket, and to receive it, and this keli, a finger can carry, you need a hand. So the Torah should have said hand. By Balaka, just practical reasons. Because it doesn't say hand, it's obvious we're not talking about the receiving of the blood, we're only talking about the sprinkling of the blood. Only there you have to have the right finger. So the Gemara, the finger. The after the Kabbalah best, but we cannot receive the finger. Kibble b'smo kosher. If you receive with the left is kosher. So the receiving the blood can only be with your hand, and therefore the Torah doesn't mention hand, means the Torah doesn't care what you do, how you receive the blood. It's only the sprinkling where it says finger. Says the Gemara, who said that you cannot pick up this bucket with a finger? Somebody, so a few generations later, somebody, the son of Rashi, said to Ravina, why can't you use a finger? Maybe he makes a little rim or a handle, this fast mizrach to the very edge of this pot. You can hold it with a finger, make a little hole, then you hold it with your finger, you can hold it. So what's he talking about? Now, obviously, Abai is not involved in the conversation with some of it. Avashi, they weren't around in the same time. They didn't live together. But obviously, they had the same conversations. There must be that Abai was arguing with Rava. We just put it as if Abai was answering someone's question. But really, Abai was discussing with Rava and he argued with Rava anyway. And Abai said, I'll tell you a different shot altogether. That's not what's going on here. Everybody holds that you learned Gzer Shava, hand, finger. So the Chachamim say, well, the Torah says V'lokach, it says Betzboy, it says V'nosan, so the finger goes on both. On the first half of the pasuk, on the second half of the pasuk, always the right. Rab Shimon says when you have a Gzer Shava, we always go forward, we don't go backward. So the Etzboy is written in the middle of the pasuk. You don't go backward to the word V'lokach. V'lokach, receiving the blood, it has Etzboy has no bearing on it. We take the word Etzboy and go forward where it talks about sprinkling, and therefore sprinkling has to be done with the right, but not the receiving. Says the Gemara, "B'mikra nidrish lefonov ula achro kamifui." Do we darshan only forwards or backwards or both? Okay, and therefore that's the machlekes. Chacham holds it goes both ways, and Abshir holds it only goes forward. Says the Gemara, and Amar Abaye, want to know is a third opinion. Rab Shimon's own son, Rabbi Lazar, disagrees with both of them. Because the Chachamim say it goes backwards and forwards. Rabbi Shimon says it goes only forwards. Rabbi Lazar, but Rabbi Shimon says it goes only backwards. It goes only backwards. And then that's one argument. Another argument is, according to Chachamim, it goes backwards one pasuk and even two psukim. And Rab Shimon and Rabbi Lazar, Rab Shimon says it only goes backwards, but only one pasuk. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Hod Rabbi Lazar, but Rab Shimon is a third view. Mafkim Edavu argues totally with his father, but also Mafkim Edavu argues with the Rabbanon. What's the story? The Tanya we learned Rab Shimon, whatever it says, Etzba B'Kabbalah. If the Torah says by Kabbalah receiving the blood, that the Torah uses the word etzba, then you have to use your right finger. Shina b'Kabbalah. If you changed, then puzzle. It is puzzle. In other words, in this pasuk where it says v'lokach and it says betzboy, according to Rabbi Loza, it's not referring to the v'nasan. That's later. We don't go forward. We only go backwards. So the word etzboy only goes backwards on the word v'lokach. So the receiving of the blood has to be done with your right finger. But placing the blood, kosher, we don't care what hand you use because the word etzboy is not referring to the future. However, he says, the chol makom anyway, Shenemet says etzba ben asin. If you have another pasuk where it says the word etzba, when it comes to placing the blood, shina ben asin, then you have to make the blood placing with the right finger. If you change it all in the giving puzzle, it is puzzle. The Kabbalah, but there in that pasuk, when it comes to receiving kosher, because there's no word, because you only go one place. Where do you find that? Where do you find that the Torah? We just said that it goes by the chatz, you don't have to use your right finger. So where does it say that you have to use your right finger? You're saying it says where it says etzba by sprinkling the blood. You make sure it's the right finger. Where does it say that? The chsiv, it says in pasuk, midam hapar. You should take from the blood of the par. And you should place it on the corner of the mizbeach with your finger. So where it says the finger, and you go backwards, it says v'nasata. So he talks about the sprinkling by the Maluim. Talks about the sprinkling. If you continue going backwards, it also says v'lakachta, you should receive the blood. But he holds you don't go back 2 steps, you only go back 1 step. Because somebody holds mikra nidrish lefanov, you only go back 1 step. V'loy lifnei fanov, you don't go back 2 steps, nor la'achrim, nor do you go forward. So he argues with the Rabban and Rabbi Loza Rab Shimon. Now we're discussing now this finger. According to Rabbi Bar Chana, the word finger alone is not sufficient to tell you it has to be the right finger. But you need etzba ukohuna. In the pasuk, if it says koyin and it says finger, then eina el yamin. It's only the right side. So in other words, you need 2 things. Because you need 2. It says v'lokach hakoyin midam hachatas. The koyin should take from the blood of the chatas. This is the pasuk we started out this whole Gemara with. The koyin says koyin takes the blood of the chatas, but right the finger v'nos lakan is. So you have koyin there. The 2 requirements, 2 criteria: koyin and finger. Then you know it means the right.